recreating depreciation schedules from scratch because the last preparer didn't keep records, or filing extensions one by one when you've got 50 clients waiting. This session walks you through the inputs that save you hours: batch extension filing, depreciation that carries forward year over year, estimated tax setup that actually e-files, and state wage allocation when your numbers don't match federal. Let's streamline your workflow.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me for another ProConnect Tax online webinar. We'll be talking about data entry and tools. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself and then we'll jump right in. I am based in New Jersey, so if you are a New Jerseyer or New Jerseyan, or if you're on the East Coast or even in Eastern Standard Time, be sure to tell me where you're from in the comments. Of course, the rest of you can also join in as well. I am a CPA, but I'm also the founder of a firm. I started my firm in 2016, ACE Group, where we empower small business owners to grow strong and sustainable businesses. I've won a couple of awards listed there. I have been a partner with Intuit, not necessarily an employee. I don't work for Intuit, but I have had the opportunity to participate on some of the councils. I'm a mentor at Montclair State University. That's my alma mater. I love this so much. I graduated from there twice. And I measure success by how much control I have over my own time. And a lot of that has to do with the systems that we put into place and the software that we use. And ProConnect has a lot to do with that because we're able to get information from our clients quicker, get it into the software quicker. We're able to advise our clients in a more timely fashion. All of this helps us to work a 4-day work week year round. And that is much more important to me than perhaps becoming a billionaire in this industry. So here's what our agenda looks like. We got a lot to cover, so stick with me. I'm going to show you how to input information like estimated tax, extensions, amending tax returns, depreciating assets, dispositions, attaching PDFs to tax returns, and then state-specific input. So we got a lot to go through. I am going to do a lot of this in product. Of course, this session is educational in nature, should not be construed as tax advice. So let's get started. I did mention to you that we're going to go through a lot of demos. So I'm going to switch over to a 1040 tax return so that I can show you how to input estimated taxes. The slides that you will see after this slide here will go through instructions on how to do it. But of course, I think seeing it in product makes it a lot easier. So bear with me while I switch over. So if you are seeing my screen, you should see that I am in a 2024 tax return. This is a demo account, so almost all of the features will be available, but not all of them. I'll do my best to show you as much as I can. So when you are entering estimated tax payments, the payments that your client has made throughout the year in preparation of having a tax liability at the end of the year, you're going to start with this input return screen. So I'm here at input return, and then I'm just going to go to payments, penalties, and extensions. 2024 estimated tax payments. I am currently working in a 2024 tax return. Now you will see these voucher amounts here if you have worked on this client in the past. So this is going to come from their prior year return. You could also have filled these in, but these will pre-populate from the prior year. Here is where you want to input your amount. So if your taxpayer has made some estimated tax payments throughout the year, this is where you want to input those amounts. Let's say this taxpayer paid federally $5,000, and they did this on April 11th, 2024. And for state, you don't see a specified state there because this is only for one state. So if I go here into the profile, I can see that I only have one state there. Let's just say I add another state. And then I go back to my input return screen. Here, now you'll see that drop down where I can indicate what state the estimated tax payment was for. So let's say it was $700 for New Jersey and $500 for New York. You'll have the ability to input these for all 4 quarters. So you'll see here, and there's also that overpayment. You can fill in that. If your taxpayer paid exactly what you put on the vouchers, you could just put a 1 here on this sort of like override box, and that will indicate that the amounts in the memo match the amounts paid. But if that was not the case, then you'll want to manually fill in those estimated tax payment amounts here. If your taxpayer made additional estimated tax payments, you have lots of boxes here where you can fill that in, as well as any payments that were made with the extension. You'll want to fill that information here as well. When you go to look at your return, so I'm just going to go to the check return tab, and I come on down, I'm in my federal income tax summary. Here I can see the estimated tax payments that I've filled in, $5,000. For New Jersey estimated tax payments, $700. And then we didn't put any information here for New York, but we did put in that estimated tax payment, and we can see that there, the $500. So these will all flow through to your tax returns. Now I'm gonna just take out New York because we don't actually need another state here for the majority of the demo that we're going to do. Keep in mind that if you remove a state versus just like continuing to work through your return or maybe even unchecking it for e-file, if you actually delete it, you cannot recover that information. So choose wisely when you are deleting. So if you needed to, I'll take this out so I can show you. 2025 or the next year. If we're working with our client and we want to start advising them on estimated tax payments to make for the next year, and we want to override amounts, we want to plan for safe harbor based on the prior year or the next year, we want to print blank estimated tax vouchers. We can do all of that from this screen here. So you'll see that I'm on the 2025 estimated tax screen. I'm still within that payment, penalty, and extension area. Here are some options I have. I can choose to apply some or all of the overpayment. Now, this taxpayer here for this example doesn't have an overpayment, but if they did, I could choose to perhaps apply the refund to the first quarter and refund the excess. I find this to be really helpful for taxpayers where you're working with them in April and they are going to have a Q1 estimated tax payment. If they're getting back excess, a lot of times this saves both you and the taxpayer time to just take care of that Q1 estimated tax payment right from here. So whatever that first payment was, it'll apply to their estimated taxes. They'll receive a refund for the excess. Now, the options I'm selecting here, I'm still at federal. What I select here has no bearing on state. I still need to make a selection for state. So just keep that in mind if you choose to use any of these options. What you do for federal does not necessarily carry over to state. Let's say you wanted to do any of these options, apply first and second, refund excess, first three, first or all four, however you decide. If you do any of these here, option 2 through option 7, you just want to make sure that you don't need to make any adjustments here, right? So if you needed to make adjustments because you wanted to see the impact of a change in withholding or a change in wages, whatever that was, just make sure that you're making those adjustments here on that federal worksheet. Just something to keep in mind. If you wanted to give your taxpayer totally blank estimated tax vouchers because they like to write in their amounts, but you want to give them those like pre-populated estimated tax vouchers, you just want to come here to estimate options and select option 8. And then when they get their estimated tax vouchers, now we know our taxpayer does have a balance due. Estimated tax vouchers will generate automatically. But if we say we just don't want them to have any amounts there, we want them to be able to fill it in on their own. Now they still get all of their information pre-populated, the address to mail it to, but they get to write in the amount that you'll probably advise them on for a fee, but they get to write in that amount and then they can mail that in on their own. So you do have that option without having to like have the client fill it in by themselves. Let's say you wanted to calculate different amounts, right? Depending on how you like to do safe harbor, you could choose to let the estimate amounts be automatically calculated using any of these options. So let's do nothing. And let's go to check return. We see that our taxpayers total balance due $35,801. If we divide that by 4 quarters, that's about $8,950. So if we go to our estimated tax vouchers here, we can see that we're about $8,950, no cents. So it rounds up to $8,951. Now that is just calculating straight divide by 4, but let's say we wanted to do something a little different, right? If we do the lesser of 90% of 2025 and we come to our estimated tax vouchers here, and we didn't do anything like special other than select that option. Now we can see that we're at a lower estimated tax value. So let's say we know that the taxpayer's income is going to be a little lower for 2025 versus 2024. Then we can make that option without having to do our own calculations. But you also have the ability to totally override all of that. Now, if you do this, you just want to be mindful that changing one means you need to change all, as you can see here in this note. If any of the estimated tax amounts are overridden, all 4 quarterly amounts need to be overridden. What happens if you don't do that? So let's say we make this one $15,000 because we know Q1 is a really high income period for the taxpayer, but we don't do anything else here. If we come and look at our estimated tax vouchers, which we could also be looking here, we'll see here 15,000, but then we see 2902, right? Because it doesn't know that how you wanted to split it from there. And then we see 8951 and 8951. So if you want to make sure that you were telling your taxpayer the appropriate amounts that you want them to pay, we were at like 36,000-ish. So let's say it's, for simple math, I want to override all 4 to make sure that my taxpayer is paying the appropriate amount for each 4 of the quarters. So then if I come back here, then I'll see my 15K, the 1K that we're suggesting, and then the 10K and the 10K. So something to note there. Now, if you want your estimated taxes to be e-filed, let's say that you and the taxpayer have already agreed on safe harbor, maybe the income's going to be really similar year over year, so you don't want to make any changes here to either federal or state. And then your taxpayer says, you know what, you can just go ahead and schedule those payments for me. You do have the ability to do that via ProConnect. So you do want to just come here. I'm in General, Miscellaneous Info, Direct Deposit. And this is my federal tab. So I have the ability to check here to have the refund direct deposited. We know this taxpayer is not anticipating a refund. I'm a big fan of checking this off once we verify the information with the taxpayer. But here's where you want to indicate electronic payment of estimated tax. Anywhere you see those little bubbles, you'll get some additional information, and you'll see here that the payments will be withdrawn from the bank account where you've entered the information here. That's where it's going to come from if you select this electronic payment of estimated tax. Once this is selected, the only way to cancel it is to call the government. You cannot come back to ProConnect once this is filed and accepted. So just keep that in mind, that the taxpayer might want to change the amount, if they might want to change the date, anything that they might want to change when they pay it, how much they pay, then this probably isn't the best option, because this is one of those things that's like, once it's done, undoing it is going to require calling, and we all know how that can sometimes be. So just keep that in mind. Now, for New Jersey, which is where I'm based, we do have the ability to file estimated taxes by quarter. So here, again, the notes, don't pass the blue boxes, y'all. The blue boxes are helpful. And these will vary by state. I find this to be really helpful because I don't want to read information here on Oklahoma if I'm working on a New Jersey tax return. So for New Jersey specifically, the estimated taxes are not transmitted with the tax return. You file those separately. I'm going to show you where to go to file those, but you don't just select like we did here, electronic payment. And then when we go to our profile, you don't get the ability to just say like, oh yeah, just do that. You need to come here and select that you want to be able to e-file these. And then you'll file these separate from the tax return. Every state is different, so you want to pay attention to how it works for your specific state. So if we come to file return, and there's going to be some information that's missing here, so there are going to be some critical errors. But if we go to e-file estimated payments, you'll see that you don't see that federal one here because we don't need to do those individually. Once we set up those estimated tax payments, those will be good to go. Here, you'll see that once we clear all those diagnostics, you'll be able to select to e-file this, and you'll also get that e-file status. So that's how New Jersey works. Every state will work differently, as I mentioned. And if we go here to check return, now I do need to put some banking information. I don't think there's any like fake banking information here. But here we can see in that e-file payment record, the banking information that we populated would be here. The amount is here. The tax type is here. The date is here. And you'll see this for estimate 1, 2, 3, and 4. I like to, when I send this to my taxpayer to sign their tax return, because we do all of our signatures electronically, I like to put initial boxes on these. You can do extra initial boxes for e-filing because I want them to see that they agree to this, because if we're going to just go ahead and file these and we're not going to like check back with the client, I want to make sure that they indicate that they knew that we were filing these on their behalf. So that is e-filing the estimated tax payments. That's filling in the estimated tax payments from the current tax year, as well as modifying the estimated tax payments for 2025. So now we can go to extensions. I'll stop sharing this so that I can just quickly show you in the slides all of that information that we just went through. So we put some boxes there, as well as some links so that you can see more information about it in more details should you need to. And then you'll see here, now we'll go to extensions. So we're going back to that demo return, same information, but I'll show you more information on the extensions. So you should be seeing this same tax return. I'll just reset and go back to the input return screen, which is where I almost always start. If you want to file an extension for a taxpayer, and we're filing electronically, everything we're talking about here is electronic because efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. You do need to select from the profile tab that you want to file extensions. So you'll see here, I'm selecting these for e-file, federal extension and New Jersey extension. Once I've done that, I'll come over to input return. I'm going back to payments, penalties, and extensions, and I'm going to the extension screen. This here is important. Putting a little 1 in here is key for letting the system know that you want to go ahead and file that automatic extension. And if you've already worked in the tax return, meaning that you've put in some income information, you put in some deductions, the tax return has already started to calculate a potential refund or tax liability. Here, it more matters about tax liability. If you do nothing else here, that 4868 is going to reflect the balance due. So all I did was put that 1 here, and then in the profile, we selected that we wanted to e-file. If I come here and I look at my 4868, you'll see here that it's saying, hey, you have a balance due, and it's anticipating that you want to pay the whole amount. Now, let's say you haven't actually finished this taxpayer's return. You filled in a little bit of information, but you really don't have any estimate of the total tax liability, and you'd rather leave that information blank. You just want to go back to input return. And I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but all of these like blue boxes in the form, just in case you weren't aware, anything that you see that's like blue means that if you click on it, it'll take you back to where that box is, where that field is in the input return section. So just a little tidbit. Here, you want to enter total tax liability. Put a -1 if you want to override that and show no tax liability. Similar to withholdings, you put some withholdings in, but you know the total withholdings, you could put the total withholdings there should you choose, right? But if you need to sort of like blank that out, you want to just go with total tax liability, -1. And that way the tax return extension filing is not expecting for there to be a tax liability. You don't have to worry about like putting in the payment information and all of that. So if you're filing it without payment, remember to put that -1 in. Now, if you go to your profile and you don't see an option for your state, we work primarily in the Northeast. I want to say maybe Georgia. If you file the federal extension, you don't need to file a separate extension for the state of Georgia. So if you put your state here and you don't see the option for extension to show up, that's likely because the state will accept the federal extension filing. So just something to keep in mind there. I'll just take that one out. Now, if we wanted to file multiple extensions at the same time, because we have not filed our extension yet, if we wanted to file just this one, we'd go to File Return, and then we just go to e-file extension. Now, this is not going to work because we have a ton of diagnostics that we'd actually have to clear. But again, this is a test return. So there are some things that we're not going to be able to clear. But once these extension diagnostics are cleared, you'll have a green box to be able to file these extensions. If you had lots of extensions that you wanted to batch file, come back to your tax return area. And here you'll see batch actions. Whenever you see this little pink button, I want to say this is like new features. Yeah, so see there, whenever there's something new going on in ProConnect, it'll be identified by like a little pink dot or a little pink new button. And you'll do batch extension filing. Select the returns that you want to file. You could search for returns. If we had used return status, which you can see here, we haven't set any return status, but you could, and you can even create custom return statuses if you haven't already done that. Here are some that we've created. And then you can sort here. So wherever you see these like up and down arrows, you have the ability to sort. Select the returns that you want to batch file. You can select up to 50. Click continue, and it'll tell you whether or not these returns are ready for e-filing. Now, the beauty of this is that if you have the fear that I had that you will accidentally file an extension and it wasn't ready, or it really should not have been filed, this will ease your concerns because this will only allow you to file extensions that are like ready to actually file. And then you can see if you're filing for just federal, if you're filing for federal and state, if diagnostics exist. You'll see that here, and you'll be able to see that for all of them. If you selected a payment method, that's going to show up. So you have the visibility across the returns you select. I think this is immensely helpful. If you're batch filing, let's just say you're working April 13th, April 14th, even April 15th, this will be really helpful to get a bunch filed at once you've checked that they are ready. If they are not, you have the comfort of seeing here that these are not eligible. You need to go back and review them. I'll close this and then I'll go back to the slides again. So here you'll just see where we've sort of detailed out for you what it looks like to file extensions. If you wanted to override the payment amount, you'll be in the same screen in which I showed you, but you just want to put amounts in total payment. So if you want to be able to make a payment, you just want to indicate that you have a tax liability. If there were any payments you wanted to back out, you want to put that in there. But if you're not going to make any payments, go with that -1 in the total tax liability, and that will be a $0 extension. All right, so next up we have amendments. I'm going to talk you through some of what happens here, and then I'll show you what you would need to do in an amendment. So I'll switch back to our tax return. And I hope you're finding the end product demo a little helpful, or more helpful rather than the slides. I think it helps to see it in practice. And then you can sort of follow along if you have your own tax return that you can put up on a separate screen. So if this were a tax return that had actually been filed, which is a tax return that you would amend, two things to note from the very beginning: work from that same tax return because you have that one credit that you've already paid for. That one credit covers the extension, it covers estimated tax filings, it covers amendments, all from that one credit for that one tax return. Also, amending from that same return means that you have all that original data already there. So if you are concerned about not having that original return preserved, if you start from the return actions to amend the return, which this isn't a filed return, so I don't have that option, you get to generate like a copy, and it'll be the original return and it'll be locked, and that'll happen automatically. It'll prompt you and ask you, but you can do that, and then you get to amend from this return here. Now, once you've got that original saved, it'll also ask you, hey, do you want me to copy these numbers into your originally reported column? And yes, you do. Because we don't have the ability to do that, I'm just going to show you what we do here. So I am going to select from my input, from my profile tab, Federal and New Jersey, because I want to amend both of those. And then I can go to my input tab so that I can begin working on the amendment. I'm in the miscellaneous forms section. And then I went to amended return and then general information. You have the ability to look at any of these like hyperlinks to get additional information on amending a return that you did not originally create in ProConnect, but we're ProConnect for lifers over here, so the return is created here. I'm going to check here that I'm amending the federal return. Here's that box that I was mentioning. Do you want to transfer your current return data to that originally reported column? If you do this, it's going to make a copy of that tax return, and then you can transfer that data to that amended, the originally reported column, so that you can make the changes in the actual screen, right? If you are also amending the state return, go ahead and put a 1 there, and then the year you're amending, you want to go ahead and type that there. From here, I normally will go straight to the explanation of changes, and I'll input why I'm amending this tax return, only because I don't want to forget. And if I don't know all the reasons, then you'll see here, I flag it so I can come back to it before I actually finalize that amendment. Once we've done that, then we can make whatever changes we need to make to the tax return. So I'm just going to go to the check return tab so I can show you what I mean here. Here's my 1040X. And because I selected that box where I wanted to transfer the data to my originally reported, this is all filled in for me. If I go back to that 1040X, I do have a column here where I can fill in correct amounts, but these are really overrides. My preference is to actually input the data where it needs to go. So if I needed to make a change to, for example, filing status. I don't know why I would, but if I needed to, or if I needed to add in some dividend income, I make the changes in the actual screen so that when I come over to my 1040X, now I can see that the net change column is going to show, hey, listen, this is what you made changes to. Your standard deduction changed because you went from head of household to single. Your income changed because you added $1,000 of additional income. So make the changes on the actual screen, and then that will populate in column B, and then C will be automatically calculated. I'll take this out because, again, I'm going to use this same tax return for all of the things that I'm going to show you today. We'll put this back to head of household. Another thing to keep in mind for amendments, because I do still see this a lot, we do have the ability to request direct deposit for refunds on e-file 1040Xs. I want to say this is for tax returns 2021 and later. So don't forget to go back, even for your amended returns, check off that you want that direct deposit, and be sure to input the banking information. And as the government is moving to more electronic payments, definitely the right thing to do, but you know, things happen with check payments. It's also a little bit slower sometimes because it's dependent on the mail. So if your taxpayer is anticipating getting a refund, don't forget to go and add that direct deposit option for them. They will thank you later. Next, we will look at depreciation. All right, so I will come down to deductions. I'll go over to depreciation. There's lots of things you could be doing in depreciation. What I love about ProConnect is that you have like a full fixed assets manager here. And if you're doing a really good job at entering the detail for these assets, when you first add them to ProConnect, a lot of the work from that point on will be done for you. And I like to be able to print depreciation schedules for clients. I can't even tell you how many returns we've gotten where they do not have depreciation schedules and you're recreating it. You know how much of a nightmare that is, because I'm sure you've been in that position as well. So you will be able to print full depreciation schedules. You can choose to give the client current year and next year, just a lot of options when it comes to depreciation. So if you wanted to, let's first put an asset in, and then I'll show you how you can view those and also print those. When you're entering the assets, we're going to start with this like quick entry grid, but trust me, you have a lot of options in the detail section. So let's go with welder tool, because our taxpayer has two businesses, welder and consultant. You'll select the category. Again, this is your quick entry. Date placed in service. Let's go with June 1st. Cost is $7,000. Now, the only other options I have once I get to the end of this, current section 179, and then method. I can select my method here. If I need a lot more options, if I need to input additional information, vehicle information, if it's time to dispose of this asset, I definitely want to go into that more detail, but I have the option of entering memos. If I wanted to create my own categories, maybe I want welder tools and I want office equipment, I have the ability to create my own categories here. I can indicate if I'm electing out of special depreciation. So first, I'm going to just do nothing, right? I'm just going to go to check return and just show you what that looks like. So my current year depreciation, here's my welder tool, my date acquired is here, my cost basis is here. The program made the assumption that I wanted to use bonus depreciation, so 60%, you'll see there, that 4,200, and then regular depreciation 560, so that is 4,760. Now I entered that on my depreciation screen. I told my depreciation screen that it's related to a Schedule C activity. So when I come to my Schedule C, I expect to see that in the depreciation section. I did not enter that into the Schedule C screen. I entered it on the depreciation screen, indicated that it was for Schedule C, and then it populates here. Now, if I said, you know what, I actually want to go back to details. And I am going to do the full 7,000. So if you come here and click on that little bubble there, you'll see that the program will let you know if you were exceeding the limitation on taking Section 179 deductions. So it will sort of keep track of that on your behalf. If you put more than you're allowed, then the program is going to alert you that you've requested too much and that you need to make an adjustment. So if I go here, I'm going back to my forms and I'm going back to my depreciation schedule. And now I can see 7,000 here, current depreciation 7,000, I have no more. And if I go to next year, I can see here that I don't have any depreciation schedule for next year as well. Now, ProConnect does a phenomenal job at doing depreciation based on the method you choose, AMT, book depreciation. It can do all of those options. You just got to give it the information it needs to be able to do that. If I go back here, back to my details, I'll just take this out for now. And if I'm going to dispose of this asset, so let's say next year you retire it, you sell it, whatever it is that you do, you'll enter the date, you'll enter any adjustments that you need to make, including the expense for the sale. You can enter the sales price. If you happen to, it doesn't work that well with the welder tool, but if you happen to dispose only a part of the asset, you can even split it and the remaining amount will stay in the program. So you have a lot of options here. Just keep in mind that if it is a house that you are disposing of, you will have some additional information that you do need to input. But you can always start here on your quick entry screen, and then you can put in the additional information that you need to. If you needed even more overrides, you have them here in this asset section here where it says miscellaneous, section 179. So that is your depreciation. Disposition actually looks pretty similar. So here, if we go to income, dispositions, Schedule D, almost always you'll be entering this information from like a 1099B. Of course, you could be disposing of other assets, but if you're entering information from your 1099B, you sold some Intuit stock, you have some options here when entering this information. If you are going to enter a lot of information that, for example, everything is reported on the 1099B, I would not suggest putting all that activity. You have the ability to enter like the total and then attach your 1099B. So let's just say it was a total of 10 stock from Intuit, but I acquired them on all different dates and I sold them on all different dates, but they were all short term. What I could do here is put a negative here. Negative means various. Date sold, I'm also putting various. Sale price, cost. I'd be entering this information from my schedule. If I leave this blank, it means it was reported to the IRS. And if I check this box off, then I'm just telling my tax return, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a PDF. I have not done it yet, but I'm going to give you a PDF to attach here. And then I'll just indicate here if it was for my taxpayer or spouse. Now, whenever I use this like negative here, I will always go in and just put if it was short or long term, only because New Jersey does not comprehend this. They're just going to use these dates. Now, because I filled these dates in to indicate less than a year, I'd be fine, but I always just go ahead and put that short term and long term. Here's where I was saying if you sell a home, you got some additional information to put for the disposition of your home or the sale of your home. But here's where you're going to put any of that information here. Almost always you'll have these little boxes up here with additional information. So if you are looking for an area where like, I need some additional inputs or some additional overrides, just look in that top right corner for a little hyperlink. If I wanted to force the printing of Form 8949, I can do that. And then if I want to make that attachment, put that attachment for this transaction, I'm just going to go to General, Electronic Filing, E-File PDF. E-file attachment, and then here I'm going to attach a PDF. Now there are limits to the size, so you may need to condense it if you find that you get an error message, but you have the ability once you've attached it to name it whatever you need to name it. You'll indicate what form you want it to be attached to. You'll indicate whether or not you want it to go to the federal return. You can also put it on your New Jersey return. And if you just wanted to double check, hey, I attached this, I believe I attached it. If you come to file return and click PDF attachments, you'll see the list of attachments that you have here. So that way you can just double check that you have put all the attachments that you wanted to put on your tax return. And I'm just going to go back for the depreciation. If we wanted to force that form 4562, I'll show you where to do that as well. I'm back in that little tiny screen there, and I'm going to force that. And then I'll show you what those look like in the preview. $45.62 is here. That's for our depreciation. If I wanted to force the $89.49, I can see that. I did indicate that I wanted short term. That's what I see here. I see this. I see attached statement. I see the amounts in which I input. I see the calculated gain or loss. So now we can go to some state-specific inputs. I believe we've already gone through the PDF attachments. I showed you how to put in PDF attachments. This is just going to give you some additional information if you need to sort of be guided through, but I've shown you how to do that in the demo. So now we'll look at state-specific input. So as I mentioned, I'm in the Northeast. New Jersey is a little interesting, as I'm sure other states are when it comes to inputting information. You have a couple of ways of getting this in. It really depends on how your specific state works. But all of the modules will have a section for state-related data entry, even local, if local is something you need to be concerned with in your state. This is for credits, this is for deductions, this is for income, this is for apportionment for business returns. I'll show you what this looks like, maybe in the wages, because we've sort of detailed that out here. So I will walk you through this and then I will show you this. If you do not see the state that you're looking for in the dropdown, always go back to the profile tab and make sure that you've actually selected to include that state's tax return. You'll save yourself a lot of time on hold with customer service or chat if you just make sure that you do that first to make sure that you see that state showing up. That's the only way that you're going to get the dropdown for that state when you're inputting information. If you are inputting wages, for example, you want to start with that wages screen. Your employer ID, you'll have the area where you can enter multiple employer IDs. I will show you this in the demo, but your state employer IDs could be different. In New Jersey, ours are a little different. New York is also a little bit different. So enter your state employer information. And in the wages section, you have a couple of places where you may need to enter it. So in box 1, we can expand that box and input state information. But for New Jersey, for example, where the income almost never matches federal, because New Jersey just does not allow as many pre-tax deductions as the IRS or other states, we almost always need to use that box 16, which is like state wages if different than federal. So I will show you what that looks like. And then I'm a big fan of, once I've input that information, again, going back to that check return or review return screen to make sure it's showing up the way you want. So I will show you that. So I'm just going to switch here. All right, so back to input return. Well, we'll start with profile, make sure that the state we want is there. So we see New Jersey. I'm just going to add another state just so you can see what it looks like for there to be multiple state drop downs. If I go to input return, and we'll start with that W-2 since that's what we talk about in the slides. Here is where I was indicating that you have the ability to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Input your multiple state employer IDs. So for New Jersey, ours is normally your EIN plus 3 zeros, but double check it against your W-2. And then for New York, you'll enter what that EIN is as well. So if we enter the EIN and it actually recognizes it, this is just one of those places where you get some efficiencies, you'll be able to import directly from here. You have a couple of options with import. You can import from your tax organizer, but you could also import here as long as it recognizes your employer via the EIN. You will have to input some information in order to confirm that you have the ability and the authorization to import this information. So sometimes it's an import code, sometimes it's the social and the full box 1 wages. Every employer differs. I'm just going to come down because that's not exactly what I want to demo for you, to box 1. Clicking on this plus sign gives you the ability to input description. Description is for you. It doesn't go to the tax return. So if you wanted to maybe say like New Jersey or New York or whatever it is. Because I'm in New Jersey, I almost never put my New Jersey wages here, but you could put your amount here, right? And then you could select which state that this applies to. Now the source column, I think the source column can be a little bit confusing because for most returns, we don't actually ever need to use the source column. I very rarely use this column, but the S here indicates state only. In here indicates not a state. So if you put in here and you put United States in state, this is only going to impact the federal return. Generally speaking, most returns do not need to worry about this, as I was mentioning. Sometimes you might need this for like a non-resident state return, but for the most part, you should be able to complete your tax return without needing to put anything in that source column. But here's where you can enter the specific information for state. Now, for me in New Jersey, where we just don't have the same income at the federal level in box 1 that we have in box 16, I will almost always end up inputting my federal wages here. Because these almost always, or actually not almost, but always will match New York so long as the taxpayer, say, for example, lived in New Jersey the whole year, worked in New York, those New York wages are going to match federal. So I will typically just put New York there. And then when I come down to New Jersey, to this box 16 state wages, that's where I'll put what my New Jersey wages are. And I'll indicate New Jersey there. For my state tax withheld, I can put both of my state tax withholdings here. So let's say per my W-2, I have $2,000 withheld for New Jersey, because I know that my New Jersey wages are always going to be higher than New York. I put my New Jersey wages there, my New Jersey withholdings there, and then for New York, and I can indicate New York there. I will show you what this looks like on the input return screen here. So we go to check return. We did put 150. We are at federal. So we see wages are 150,000 at the federal level. For New York, those wages match New York, match federal, 150,000. And then for New Jersey, they're 166,000. When we look at our withholdings, I'm just coming down here. New Jersey tax withheld, 2,000. And New York tax withheld to 15,000. So that is all from the state specific input that we put on that W-2 screen here. Right there. So that state income tax withheld, you see that breakdown between New Jersey and New York. They're in the same box. I do know that some people will also put them here. I just don't because these are override boxes, but you could technically put your state wages here, state income tax. I just like to put it in the actual box, and I only use the override boxes if I absolutely need to use them there. So we can go back to our slides. All right. So as I was mentioning, as a New Jersey, where we do a lot of New Jersey returns, we end up using that box 16 quite often. And this is when the wages for your resident state are more than the federal amount. So just something to keep in mind there. And as I was mentioning again for New Jersey, we just don't recognize as many pre-tax deductions as the federal wages recognize. So I hope you found this to be helpful. Just remember that you are not in this alone. You do have support and community. Support from other Intuit accountants. You should reach out to accountants.intuit.com/en-us. You'll have the ability to search through program guides, resources, get answers to a lot of the questions you have on ProConnect. You can also explore the community. Connect with experts and tax pros like yourself. See some of the questions that they are asking, get answers to your questions, get inspired. You can see those things at accountants.intuit.com/community. If you are looking for more free training and resources like this webinar today, you can access the Education Center at the address below. You'll have access to live webinars, recorded webinars, decons, which can be extremely helpful. You can also get a bunch of CPE over just the course of a day or two, self-paced modules, and important articles. The Tax Pro Center is also available for you. Lots of great articles, especially around this time, but lots of great articles on trending topics in both the tax and accounting industry. So be sure to bookmark that tab as well. I hope you found today's webinar to be helpful. Otherwise, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for enjoying and joining me today. I hope this was enjoying for you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Be well.
You now have the tools to stop rebuilding what should already exist. Batch file extensions without the fear of submitting one that wasn't ready, track depreciation year over year without recreating schedules, e-file estimated taxes by quarter, and allocate state wages correctly when they don't match federal. Ready to put these efficiencies into practice? Head to accountants.intuit.com/training, where you'll find hands-on resources, free CPE and CE credits, webinars, articles, and everything you need to master ProConnect Tax. Let's streamline the rest of your season.